Hello there, my name is Dan and I'm a very keen home grower of fruit and vegetables. Over the last few years I've been working on a partial self-sufficiency project here in Essex, UK, and as part of the project I have a permaculture project, food forest, backyard orchard, and this video is to give you some ideas on how to start your own permaculture project if you wish to. So if you like my work, please feel free to like and share, and if you'd like to be notified of any further videos I put up, please feel free to subscribe. So if you Google permaculture, this is one thing that you get. The development of agricultural ecosystems intended to be sustainable and self-sufficient. We're into autumn now, so the backyard food forest is defoliating. Had a great year this year, and today I'm going to be talking about some practical principles that you can employ for your own permaculture project. Time of year is coming up where many people will be considering starting their own permaculture projects or indeed adding to existing ones. First principle for you to take into consideration is the climate where you live. For example, pears do very well here in the UK, as do cherries and many other temperate fruits. Plants such as banana plants can be grown here in the UK, but they do require additional thought because they are not winter hardy. But of course, if you're living in a tropical climate, banana plants could be a great part of a permaculture project. The next principle to take into consideration is the area size. So for example, if you have a small area such as this, strawberry plants such as this planted like that could be brilliant. You could maybe have a dwarf fruit tree grown on a dwarf rootstock such as a minaret here. This cherry tree is grown on a minaret rootstock, otherwise known as a vertical cordon. I've chosen to grow it as more of a tree, but I could prune it so it's cordon-like, and this is a very good way of growing trees in a small space if that's what you have. Of course, the bigger the size you have to work with, the more that you can put into it. But do your research on this subject, look into rootstocks, dwarving rootstocks, semi-dwarving or full-size rootstocks, or even growing trees on their own roots. It's a big subject to look into, but very interesting indeed. If you have a very small space, something like some strawberry plants grown in a container like this could be a good idea. Take into consideration your soil type. For example, if your soil is alkaline, then you will not do well with blueberries, which require a pH of 4.5 to 5.5 in order to thrive. So if this is the case, what you can do is grow them in containers, like I have here in this polytunnel. A general rule of thumb for growing fruit is to aim for a pH of about 6 to 6.5. As I've described earlier, there are certain exceptions to the rule, and some are more tolerant than others of going either side of this, but that's a good pH to aim for. Another consideration to take into account would be whether your soil is poor or well draining. So if you've got poor draining soil, you would not do well to plant a grapevine into soil such as that. So you could consider adding some organic matter, or indeed once again maybe growing one in a container. One very important consideration is your physical capability. So for example, if you've got a bad back, if you've got joint pains, you may have to take this into consideration, particularly if you don't have anyone who can help you with the project. But you may consider having a tree which is about, say, this high, something like that, and what you can then do is pick the fruit, because it will be roughly at the height where your arms are, so that will be very handy indeed. On the other hand, if you've got a rather large tree that requires you to climb it in order to pick the fruit, then that may not be the wisest decision to make. Employing raised beds can be great for this. So although I have this set with salads and vegetables, I could have things like strawberries, blueberries, raspberries in here, soft fruit, etc., which would form part of a permaculture project, and it's much easier to pick with it being raised off the ground like this. You can also buy planters which are at a handy height, or you could make your own. If you have a table such as this can be very handy. You could have strawberries in pots on it, or you could have blueberries in pots, soft fruit in pots, or even dwarf trees in pots on it. So that would stop you having to bend down or whatever to pick the fruit. Another consideration is your time availability. Do you work full-time? Do you work part-time? Do you have family responsibilities? Are there other things that you do? Other hobbies? It's very important to consider this because it's very easy for one to have eyes bigger than their belly, so to speak. You buy loads of things or maybe you take loads of cuttings and then before you know it, you've got a monster that you can't control. So if that's you, you may be better off starting off very slowly, very small, getting it slowly going and then adding to it gently. Money. Now, one must consider this because it's likely that you'll be having to buy some, if not all, of what you are going to grow. So consider how much you're willing and able to spend on your project and shop around. Sometimes you can get some right bargains and maybe even you've got a friend or whatever, fellow allotmenteer, who can give you some cuttings or some scions to take your own cuttings or graft your own plants. Maybe some things like raspberry suckers that come up can be very handy indeed, and also strawberry runners as well. So take into consideration the amount of money you've got to spend. Things like containers for container growing, the tools you're going to be using, the growing mediums if you're going to be buying them, they can all add up, so think about that. Your current knowledge level, take this into consideration. So growing something like apples here in the UK could be said to be easier and more straightforward than growing something like peaches in a climate such as the UK. Do you need to have more than one tree that flowers at the same time for cross-pollination, or is what you are growing self-fertile? Do you only need one tree? Does your neighbour have a tree that flowers at the same time to help with pollination, or do you need to plant two? Think about all of this, do your research before you buy. As fellow Essex gardener Beth Chateau said, right plant, right place. Simple really. How much time and patience are you willing to put into the project? So, how much time do you have to initially work on the project? How much time do you have to maintain it? And how patient are you? How long are you willing to wait for your eventual crop? For example, if you're growing something like walnuts or mulberries, you will likely wait a lot longer for your crop than if you're growing something like strawberries. So think about this. Take into consideration your surroundings. Is your garden a sunny garden? Is it a darker garden, north or south facing? Do you have things like south facing walls or fences, which are great for growing things like grapes up? Do you have darker parts of your garden caused by the direction the garden is facing, by surrounding buildings which things like peaches or grapes, for example, would not thrive, but maybe a sour cherry would? Research thoroughly the growing conditions that the plants you intend to grow like. Infrastructure such as polytunnels or greenhouses, which can be great to extend the season in order to provide a microclimate. The peach tree I grow in here benefits very much from the polytunnel because it protects it from winter rainfall, which is very important for the prevention of peach leaf curl. It also helps provide a nice warm environment for the crops to ripen in. This polytunnel is a 3 metres by 2 metres polytunnel made by Feel Good UK. This is a 6 metres by 3 metres Feel Good UK polytunnel. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I use them because I think they are great polytunnels. If a polytunnel or a greenhouse is not to be part of your permaculture project, then you could consider a cold frame, which is basically a small polytunnel or a greenhouse. These can be brilliant in order for growing things like strawberries in, and you can even get some that are high enough so you can grow things like blueberries in them in order to protect them from birds. So these are also great for the microclimate they provide as well. Water butts are brilliant in order for you to harvest your own rainwater. It can be very beneficial to water blueberries with rainwater because tap water tends to be more alkaline, and as I described earlier, blueberries like an ericaceous acidic growing medium. Grow what one likes to eat, or whoever the intended audience is. Grow what they like. So if one likes gooseberries, like you can see behind me, grow gooseberries. Know your reason for growing. Why are you growing something? So, for example, if you're going for mass food production, you may wish to choose a very heavy cropping apple, very suited to the environment in which you're intended to grow it in. If you want to grow something that you cannot purchase at your local shop, your local supermarket, then you may wish to grow it in your own project. This variety of strawberry, Centenary, is a commercial variety and you can purchase them readily, but I'm growing them here because they're very nice tasting strawberry and they are also heavy cropping. This variety here, Royal Sovereign, is a historical variety and not heavy cropping, and you're unlikely to be able to buy these in a supermarket, but if you want to grow something that you can't get hold of that easily, then you may consider doing that. Be aware of what is available, when and where. For example, at certain times of the year you can't buy certain varieties of tree maybe. Maybe you have to wait until the dormant season before you can get a specimen of that. So plan well ahead in advance. Be a real shame for you to get everything ready for a particular tree, plant, whatever to go in, and then you can't get hold of it. So plan ahead and think, and if necessary write it down so you remember it. Consider how long one is living at a particular address. For example, if one is expected to move, then one may consider growing plants in containers or pots. For example, this nectarine tree here, which is nearly in dormancy now, I have it sunk in the ground in a container here. So if one did move, they could take the tree with them, whatever time of year it is or was. The same with everything you see here. So some of the trees at this project I've actually moved from other projects to here, and what I did was I dug them up during the dormant season when they were relatively small specimens, and then that way if you move them at that time it's less shock to the tree and your chances of the tree surviving are higher. But if you're going to be moving trees that are in the ground or plants, whatever, do your research first, okay? Because you want to get it right. There are some practical permaculture principles for you. So, if you like my work, please feel free to like, share and subscribe. And you can always check me out on Dan_Home Gardens on Instagram, if indeed you're interested. Thank you for viewing. See you next time.